Good morning. I'm Carlton Sharp, pastor of Faith Christian Center Church, right here in Beaumont, Texas. And we're here on what's happening in our neighborhood. And today, my special guest is Captain Brad Penisson from the Beaumont Fire Department. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you.
Hey, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I'm a captain with the Beaumont Fire Rescue. I'm assigned to we call it the Community Risk Reduction Division. It's normally called the Fire Marshal's Office.
The fire, okay.
It's easier to keep track of. But I've been there 40 years now.
40 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I've been assigned to that office quite a few years. And our office is responsible for public education, inspections, investigations, things of this nature.
Well, that's what we're here today for, is to educate those who are watching today about some of the things that you do for our community. Now, one of the areas that you deal with is smoke detectors in the home. So let's start there.
Well, when we always talk about general fire safety, fire prevention, this is one of the things we always promote more than anything else is smoke detectors. Smoke detectors are a life-saving device. It doesn't sound like it is because it's just a little bitty piece of equipment. It usually costs about $10 nowadays. It's real common, but it can save lives. And we've documented over the years fires across our country that with working smoke detectors, if there's a fire in the home, they have saved lives. And that's why every home should have at least one working smoke detector at all times.
Now, is there a particular area, let's just say for that one, is there a particular area that you would suggest that they put that fire detector?
What we look at, when you look at your home, you think you have living areas and you have sleeping areas. The majority of fires that have involved fatalities usually happen at night when people are in the sleeping area.
Wow.
Okay? And the fires usually start or occur in the living areas. So if there's only one smoke detector in the home, it should be between the living and sleeping areas. Nowadays, codes have improved, and what is recommended is actually a smoke detector in every sleeping room, every bedroom, in the hallway between those sleeping rooms and the living room, and also one in the living room itself.
Now, are you requiring now?
New construction requires all those smoke detectors.
Yeah, I know. I have tons of them.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're building something new, it's required that you have the smoke detectors.
Right.
But those who are in existing homes.
Older homes don't have that many smoke detectors, but some do, some don't. It's an occupant's decision if they want to do that. But we always recommend everyone needs to have at least one. At least one. Right.
Okay. Now, also you do you have this thing to do trainings or for exit drills for your home if something should happen.
Right. When it kind of goes in line with the smoke detectors. What happens is, on the smoke detectors, another thing with the smoke detectors, you'll hear us talk about every spring and every fall when they change the clocks, change the batteries in the smoke detectors.
Yes.
And part of that is we recommend, especially families with children, test those smoke detectors on a regular basis. Just push the button, let the kids know what it sounds like. And when we talk about exit drills, all of us remember growing up in school, we always had fire drills.
That's right,
okay?
That's right.
Well, what's the purpose of the fire drill? The purpose of the fire drill is so that the children know what to do in case of an emergency, okay? And to practice that with an adult, supervision. Well, that's the same thing we talk about with exit drills in the home. It's called EDITH, E-D-I-T-H. Those exit drills in the home are important because children need to know what to do in case of emergency at home as well as at school. Because as parents, okay, we always think, oh, I'm going to be there to take care of my child. Okay, I'm going to watch out for my child. I'm going to protect my child. But in the middle of the night, smoke, fire, emergencies, sometimes we're separated from our children.
Right.
Okay. What we found out is that a lot of times children will panic, and children will go to what they call a safe spot.
Right.
And for children, the safe spot is usually under their bed
or in the closet.
Or in their closet.
Right.
Okay. We don't want them to do that in case of emergency. We want them to get out of the house. So they need to know how to do that without mom and dad.
Well, I have to admit that I didn't even think about having a family fire drill at home.
Right.
And I've never done it. Thank God my children are grown now, but still, that is great information that those who, especially with small children, need to start practicing on how to evacuate or escape their home in case of something.
And what we do when we talk about the fire drills in the home is let them know what the smoke detector sounds like and know that means an emergency, get out of the house, where to go, how to get out of the house, in more than one way. That we teach kids, feel the door and see if it's hot. If it's hot, don't open that door because that means there's fire on the other side. Crawl low beneath the smoke, and that's where the good area is, and get out of the house. And we tell them, get out and stay out. They'll go back in for their favorite toy or their blanket or something like that. Get out of the house and stay out. But also have a meeting place outside the home so that if you get separated from mom and dad, get out of the house, go to that meeting place, and wait there for mom and dad.
Now, is this some training that you do for the community?
Sure. A lot of times we're doing community functions and everything, and we talk about exit drills in the home. We've had a trailer years past, a safety trailer we called it, that actually had like a kitchen, a living room, and a bedroom, and we would let kids actually practice fire drills and show them how to do all that.
Now, okay, for instance, like here at our church, is that something that we could have a training session where the fire department will come out and do a training session, say during the summertime?
We can. We've done a lot of programs with churches, and daycares, nursing homes. You know, you name it. We've done different kinds of programs, and you know that's part of our job is educating the public.
Wow. Okay. Now, I see this thing called grease fires. Okay, and cooking.
Cooking fires.
Cooking fires. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, cooking fires it's a real common fire in the home, and usually it's unattended cooking. People put a pot on the stove and they get busy and they walk off and forget about it. You know, so that's also one of the reasons that we don't put smoke detectors in the kitchen, because they go off all the time and then people take the batteries out and then you don't have any kind of thing. But at the same time, we want to make sure that if they're cooking that they attend that, you know, that they pay attention to what they're doing. And one of the things we tell people is when you're cooking, if you leave the room for some reason, because we all have a tendency to do that. We got other things we're going on doing around the house.
Multitasking.
Take a pot holder or something with you as a reminder that, hey, I've got something on the stove.
Wow.
Okay? So it's not filling your house up with smoke by the time you realize what's going on back in the kitchen.
So does most of the fires start like that?
Well, that's one of the most common fires we have in homes nowadays is kitchen fires, cooking fires, things of this nature. So that's why we always want to remind everybody to be careful when you're doing that. And it kind of goes back in line with our fire drills with the kids. Teaching fire safety around the home, you know, like in the kitchen. We have a tendency when we're cooking everything, we're getting busy. It's always better to turn the handles of the pot to the side so that some child didn't come by and tip the pot and knock the pot off, stuff like that. So, you know, keep clothes away, loose clothes or towels, things of this nature away from the stove. You know, so there's a lot of things involved with that, but at the same time, teach the children that as well. You know, most moms want to teach their younger daughters and everything how to cook, but let's teach them how to do it properly and do it safely. You know, a lot of the times when we have these little toddlers running around the house, that's when we see a lot of accidents happen. When they come into the kitchen and they're playing around the stove or something like that. You know, the stove is a work area; it's not a play area.
Right.
You know, so that's one of the things we have to teach our kids at home too. Just like we're teaching all these kids things at school, we need to teach our kids at home as well.
Okay, so how do we teach our kids how to use the 911 system?
The 911 system is to remember that 911 is for emergencies. If you see a crime in progress, if you see a fire, if you see a medical emergency, that's what the 911 system is designed for. What we see a lot of times is what we call abuse of the 911 system. People are calling the 911 for just any little thing. And what you need to remember is that as a community, with our first responders, police, fire, and medical, we have limited resources, okay? Now, our responsibility is to cover the entire city and protect all of our citizens. And if you call, we're going to come. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're there for, okay?
Yeah.
And we want to protect you. But what happens if somebody abuses the 911 system and calls for something that really isn't an emergency, and we dispatch resources, then we're tying up somebody that could be needed in another emergency, in a real emergency. So that's why we always want to caution, and we talk a lot about correct use of the 911 system. You know, like I said, a crime in progress, an accident, a fire, a medical emergency, something that you need emergency first responders. But if it's not an emergency, there's business numbers that we can call with fire and police and say, hey, I saw this or I saw that, and, you know, somebody needs to look at this, but it's not necessarily an emergency. And here in Beaumont, we have what we call a 311 system, which is the city informational system. They can call 311. You know, if they see a stop sign down or a tree down in the street, or you know, any little thing like that needs to be addressed by our city resources, they can call 311,
Yeah.
It's not emergency.
Uh-huh.
It's just something they've seen and needs to be addressed. It could be a pothole, anything, any type of situation in the city. But the 311 is not an emergency, and they can get resources out there to take care of it. And reserve the 911 for emergency resources.
Now, is there any other thing that we need to know today that could help, especially with fire prevention?
Well, when we're talking about fire prevention, spring and summer, we get into air conditioners. And then in the winter, you get into your heaters. So what we recommend is that every spring, every fall, that you have your air conditioning and heating systems checked out by a professional, a licensed company. And we always recommend using a licensed company because they're trained to do that. I know people that, well, I'm going to get my uncle to do this or that, or my brother-in-law. Well, but that doesn't always work out, okay? We want somebody that's licensed to do that so that you're protected, okay? But it's important that we get those systems checked on a regular basis. Personally, on my home, I've got a contract with an air conditioning company where they call and remind me every 6 months.
Right.
They come out and do my system. Because I want to check to make sure it's, they do the air conditioner in the spring, they do the heater in the fall, to make sure it's working properly.
Now, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's important because as we get into the summer months, everybody's cranking up their air conditioners. If they haven't been serviced properly, we start seeing problems with that, and we start seeing fires. Same thing in the fall with heaters. The first time most people kick on the heaters,
you smell that burn smell.
It's the lint in the
Yeah.
system and everything. Well, if you've had it serviced, and make sure it's all working correctly, you don't have that.
So, okay. Now, how important is it for at home to have a fire extinguisher?
Fire extinguishers are one of those things that it's always a good thing to have if you know how to use it and you feel confident in using it. What we've seen is we teach a common RACE, R-A-C-E, and we use that acronym in businesses, nursing homes, hospitals, and it's a good acronym to remember at home too, R-A-C-E. R is relocate.
Okay.
If you've got family members, children, young adults, senior adults that can't take care of themselves, things of this nature, if you're at home and you have an emergency, relocate that one that needs help. Okay, get them out of danger. A is for alert. Somebody needs to call 911. Okay, I tell people all the time, I'd much rather you call us and us not be needed when we get there than you to need us and not call us.
Wow.
Never hesitate to call 911 if you think you have an emergency.
But just not to cut you off, but I think some people think that there's a cost associated with calling.
And that's why I say, a lot of times people think, well, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big of an emergency. And then, like a pot on the stove, I thought I could handle it. Well, by the time they realize they couldn't handle it and their whole house is on fire, and then they get around to calling us, by the time we get there, it's too late.
It's too late, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, alert. A is the alert. Call 911. Get resources rolling. If by chance you get the fire out before we get there, you can always call them back and say, I have the fire out, and
Right.
we can slow down.
Right.
Okay? Because here's the deal. In Beaumont, you call 911 and you say, my house is on fire, we send at least 5 fire trucks.
Wow.
Okay? Because of the personnel. We want to get enough people there up front to make sure we can handle your emergency.
So
Okay?
hold up. You're sending how many people?
At least 5 trucks
Wow.
on a structure fire. Okay? We only have 12 in the city. Okay?
So you're almost sending half of the department.
On duty department.
Right.
And that's why I say it's so important to use 911 correctly. Okay?
Yeah.
See, all this ties together. So
Wow.
A of the race is alert. Call
Okay,
911.
okay.
C is confined. If you remember what I talked about earlier about the fire drills at school, what we teach the kids, as you go out the door, close the door behind you, because it prevents the spread.
Yeah.
If there is actual something
Get that
going on.
oxygen in there.
Okay.
Boom.
So C is confined. If you have a fire in your home, close the doors, confine it. And then E is extinguish. If it's small enough and you think you feel confident enough in using the extinguisher, by all means, attempt to extinguish it. But don't put yourself in danger. Make sure you have an exit way behind you that,
Right.
that if you can't get out, you can get out. Okay? Because it goes right back to what we told our kids: get out and stay out.
Right.
Okay. All these messages tie in together.
They link together.
Okay?
Yeah. Exactly.
So the acronym for any kind of emergency is RACE: relocate, alert, confine, and then extinguish. And then when we talk about fire extinguishers, a common extinguisher is what we call an ABC extinguisher. It's the different types of fires: electrical fire, grease fires, paper fires. And so they're real common. They sell them at all the hardware stores. They're not very expensive nowadays. You can get them for your home. And it's a multi-purpose extinguisher. And again, we have an acronym we use for those.
You got an acronym for everything.
Well, we teach these things because so people can remember them.
Because, I mean, race, you can literally see race.
Right, okay? The acronym for the extinguisher is what we call PASS, P-A-S-S. Because when you think of a fire extinguisher, it's got a pin in the top of it, and it's got to squeeze the handle, and you got a little nozzle, okay? P is pull the pin.
Yeah, you got to pull the pin.
Pull the pin, and then you aim, and you aim the nozzle at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and the second S is sweep it back and forth, okay?
Pull the pin.
Pull the pin, aim at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and sweep the nozzle back and forth.
Okay. Now, okay. So now, most people haven't checked their fire extinguishers, and maybe they're in there for 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
How often should they replace their fire extinguishers, even if it's not used?
Okay. What will happen is, in commercial buildings, extinguishers have to be inspected once a year.
We just got that done.
Okay. And again, we use licensed contractors to come in and do that because that's what they're trained to do. Same thing with your home. You can buy these extinguishers at the stores and everything, but you can have these commercial companies check them out for you once a year, and they'll service it. There's depending on the type of extinguisher you have, there's different time frames to how long it can go before it has to be replaced or tested or things of this nature. So again, those fire alarm or fire extinguisher companies can explain all that and handle that for you, and even replace the extinguisher if it needs to be replaced. You know? So those kind of things will happen as well.
And I highly recommend that people actually look at their extinguishers and make sure that they're in date, because it's one thing to have one and not need it, but then there's another thing to need it and not have it.
Same thing about calling 911. And most of the time there's going to be a dial on the face of it to show you that if it's in good working order. And then somewhere on there will be a manufacturer date that tells you when it was manufactured. Some extinguishers, they have to be replaced after 5 years. Some are 10 years. It depends on the extinguisher, so you'd have to look at it to see that.
Okay, now, so is there any other information that our viewers need to know today that could help them at their home?
When we talk about things in the home, I think we've talked about smoke detectors and the importance of those smoke detectors, the fire extinguishers if they have them, the exit drills, using 911. And what I'm thinking about, not just in the home, but when we talk about 911 and emergency responses, is when we see people on the roadway, what to do when they see a fire truck or a police car or an ambulance coming at them with the lights and siren. Our traffic law says that if you see an emergency vehicle, you're supposed to pull to the right and yield the right-of-way to those emergency vehicles. So that's what we want to remind everybody. We see people when they see the lights, especially if they see a police car, they think they're getting stopped.
Right.
Well, it may be they're going to an emergency. You don't know, but that's why they say, you slow down, pull over to the right. Maybe they'll be lucky and the police car passing by. But with these ambulances and fire trucks, when they're going to an emergency, if they see an emergency vehicle with the lights and siren activated, pull over to the right and give them the right of way, because they're trying to get through traffic, and if you just stop in the middle of the road, it just makes things worse. And then also remember that if you see a scene with emergency equipment on the scene, on our highways, it's actually a law now that you're supposed to slow down and move over to the other lane. If it's in a local residential area, try to avoid those areas because the traffic's going to be bad. And the thing to remember, just as I talked about a while ago, on a structure fire in Beaumont, say it's a home, we've got multiple pieces of equipment responding. So when you see that first fire truck, a lot of people, they want to pull up and see what's going on. Well, they need to remember there's going to be more fire trucks coming. So now they're in the way. Okay, so that's why we tell them, try to avoid those areas and stay out of that area.
Okay. So if a person sees a fire truck coming, and this is a good point, I need to find out, and they're in that right lane, but the light is red and it's traffic, you got 3 cars, and the fire truck needs to get through. Is it legal for that person to drive through that red light to get out the way?
If they can do it safely.
Yeah.
I mean, they need to look and make sure they yield the right of way to any other vehicles. But if there's no traffic and they can pull out of the way of that fire truck and let them by, yes, it is allowed.
Okay, that's because, you know, I've seen it happen before where, you know, the fire truck is trying to get by, but there's 4 cars in front and the light is red, and I really want to get out the way.
Right.
You know, but I don't want to get a ticket, you know.
Right, and like I said, and you're right, in an emergency situation like that, if you can do so safely, we don't want people to just arbitrarily run the red light.
Right, right.
But they need to look, and if they can do so safely and get out of that fire truck's way or that ambulance, by all means, you know, we want them to do so, and they won't get a ticket for doing that. So that's something to think about.
And so before we end today, let me take this time to appreciate you and those who work in the fire department. I personally got a greater revelation on what actually happens when I was working at one of the refineries here in Beaumont. I had to go to fire school, and I went through the house and everything. I sucked one of those tanks dry. My heart rate was going so fast, and I came back to town. And I say I got a greater appreciation for firefighters because of what I had to go through in order to get that training.
And that's what today is May the 11th. We just had a memorial service downtown for police officers. And one of the things we talk about is that police officers, firefighters, our emergency medical personnel, we've taken an oath to protect our citizens, and we do this very strongly. It's not just a job for us. It's a vocation. It's an avocation. It becomes our lifestyle. And so we want to protect our citizens, do everything we can. And I appreciate it when citizens recognize those emergency first responders, because it's not just firefighters, it's police officers and medical personnel as well that have taken that. You know, we run to the danger when everybody else is running away.
From it.
You know, but that's what we're there for.
Well, listen, I want to thank Captain Penisson for coming today and sharing these helpful tips with us today on fire prevention, especially in your home. Have a plan of action. Teach our children how to respond just in case there is a fire. So take the things that he's talked about today, implement them into your home, and make our neighborhood a lot safer. So I want to thank you for joining us today on What's Happening in Our Neighborhood, and we will see you next time on our broadcast.